All right, it is now, whatever time it is.
4:04.
4:04, we are calling the meeting to order. All right, roll call. Tony's out. Scott Berman.
Here.
Ken Fletcher.
Here.
Thank you. Calvin is not here yet. Mr. Du Bois is out. Laura is out. Rachel.
Here.
Thank you. All right. Need a motion for that?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, now, that was the agenda, right?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I gotta just get my mind wrapped around this right now. Are we on to 4 already? Public comments?
Yep.
Any public comments? Well, she said she was gonna get up and talk.
That was a joke.
Oh. All right, now let's move on to approval of minutes from October 9th, 2023.
I move adoption of the October 9th minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. Let's move on to old business, corridor action plan updates.
So I wanted to add this back on to the agenda. We talked about it last week, but not everybody, or last month, not everybody was here. So I wanted to go over it again and not to take too much of your time up, but to go back through the action plan and just make sure that since the last time we talked about it, there haven't been any further thoughts about it, additions, subtractions, changes, that kind of thing. So in your packet is a memo that I put together for the October meeting that identified, I think, 11 different items that could comprise what could be a corridor action plan. And so one, I hope everyone had a chance to take a look at them. And if you didn't, we could take time to go through those really briefly now. And then just do a little some updates, because there have been a couple updates since the last meeting. So
Can you go through it a little bit? I
Yeah,
did
do you
not get
mind?
a chance. Yeah.
Okay, I figured because I knew there were some, actually, I think this group, a few of you weren't there last month. So number one, and I'll go quickly, we don't have any other items on the agenda really outside of the public information, the informational meeting, which, as you can see, didn't really garner a lot of attention. So I was thinking this would be the item really to talk about today. So number one is work with a consultant and the township's engineer and utility departments to review utilities along the corridor and identify any needed upgrades or rerouting. This is going to be mostly relevant for utilities east of the highway. That right now, we'll get into this in a minute, MDOT has kind of started its very long process of considering that area west of the highway. So they have a multi-stage process that includes public comment, and we'll get into that. But they work slowly. They're a big organization. It's a big project. That's not going to happen super fast. But what our engineering department has taken a look at utilities in that area. We don't have the same kinds of issues because it's newer development as we do further down east of the corridor. So I was envisioning this, and certainly we'll work with our other departments, but being more of a looking at our utilities. Do we have utility conflicts, like if they're, for example, in the roadway? That's really where we run into a lot of problems. So are there opportunities along the corridor to address some of these issues? There really, I'm kind of considering that to be like planning for development and avoiding issues when development does come, like being ready. So that's number one. I'll just throw like an open questions, comments, concerns about that one.
Is that really though anything for the CIA board? That's something that obviously the utilities department and the engineering department needs to take a look at. Is there moving forward with doing that work on the road, but is that something the CIA board needs to get involved in?
Well, but potentially from a cost perspective, if you do end up having dollars to sharing costs in changes like a rerouting a utility line. It was in a lot of this stuff I pulled
I
from
know
the
there was also talk about,
TIF plan.
the arduous cost of, burying utilities.
Yeah, I've
Part
got
of
that
this
listed
project,
separately
which
on
is-
here. So utility relocation, easement acquisition were under site prep on the TIF plan. for this corridor. That's how I was seeing it as being relevant. You thought about that?
No, I think we, we put that into the CIA plan to help fund the study of the utilities. And again, as Peter mentioned, it's more so on this stretch of Saginaw because they're close, there's more utility complex actually in the roadway versus that side. The utility department and engineering would certainly be a part of that, but as related to kind of corridor planning, back when we did the CIA plan, we put that in there.
And they're listed.
Allow, or at least
Yes, sir.
allow first, at least had mentioned that as part of a potential corridor study.
And sorry for interrupting you, but I wouldn't, the plan would be, we would bring something, if there was something identified by our team, we would bring it back to this group to determine whether it's relevant or something that you'd be interested in. I don't know if it would be sharing funding or even being involved with it all, other than just being in the loop and apprised of what's going on. Okay,
Vote on that or
So
something?
I'm skeptical of that.
Okay.
If there's benefits to utilities to move them or whatever, that's a utilities thing, you know, proving the corridor is, I think, something different. So if there's a benefit to the utilities of moving their utilities, that's their business, not ours.
Well, this would be, this is water. Are you talking about like power? This is water.
I'm talking about anything, it'd be, well, if there's a benefit that has nothing to do with the town, with improving the corridor per se, it's just for the functionality of the utilities department to move it out of the road, why necessarily should the CIA be funding that?
Yeah, I agree in principle with that. I mean, I don't think it hurts to bring it up as a discussion point.
what was the intent of including utility relocation in the TIF plan? I don't have the history on.
I'm gonna guess it was the bearing part that it was deemed at the time to probably be not feasible because of expense, but that it would change sight lines, functionality and reliability if we buried some of that.
The power lines.
Mhm.
No, it was because we have utilities in the roadway down here and we have some that are not sized well, so it was which is part of the township plan also, but to study the utilities through that corridor so that we could be ready in case they do come through and redo the roadway, so we would be ready to piggyback utility projects on it versus I guess not being ready once the road gets dug up or there's you know, changes, boulevarding or whatever, that type.
But that makes good sense to me, but in support of what Ken's questioning, without getting too wrapped up in the minutia, I think the question remains, does that relate to what's the direct line between that and what we would need to do to improve the corridor? I think is ultimately the question.
Well, is improve only aesthetics? I was thinking
no.
more in being prepared for future development, because I mean, like zoning changes don't necessarily have anything to do with improving the corridor either.
No, I would agree that it means much more than aesthetics, you know, whether it's grants or doing things like that, but I would assume that utilities also have a burden of being prepared for growth, like MDOT's doing changes on their dime to handle what they outlined were increased traffic patterns. So I don't know the answer. I think it's fine to have it brought up, but I agree with, after hearing Ken, I agree with the skepticism of some projects seem like maybe they could be something, they don't want to go as far as we want them to go. And so then we want to consider funding it so that we can grow better, but seems like they probably would want to consider what the corridor is going to look like from business demands too for the next 20 years.
Yeah, even as utility changes or moving related to a project that we're doing along the corridor that precipitates changing something, if it's just, oh, they're gonna be redoing the road, so maybe we should move our utilities let's have the CIA board pay for that. That was what I envisioned.
Yeah, no, I think it's good intellectual debate, but I think it's a debate worth having. I mean, I'm not saying no to it personally, but
It just to be, make sure clear, I think, the purpose was just for, yeah, for some studying. It was not funding the actual moving of utilities. That would be a utility cost, so it's part of the studies. In terms of being prepared for an MDOT corridor.
and I trust that is the case, but it may have come up from that project that now I think is going to Board of Water and Light, where you tried to get a apartment complex, but we didn't have the capacity to, if I remember correctly, capacity in the plumbing to handle the density. I mean, I
Yeah,
remember that discussion. So
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do
No.
with capacity. We know we have crossings, we have undersized mains, we have mains in the roadway. It's not a function of just moving. We know we have capacity concerns too, but this is just once we understand a little bit more of the future of the roadway, being able to have a study that says, here's the optimal projects if they come up, so we can be prepared for, if the road is dug up, to be prepared for optimal water or sewer projects.
So argue the study of that should be borne by utilities versus. Because the end result will be utilities will make those changes because it fits their needs, not anything that improves the corridor. So the study of that makes perfect sense. Be prepared to act while the road's being ripped up. However, I'm not sensing that it's necessarily a corridor improvement that we should fund per se. It should be utilities fund.
Okay, well, they can remove it from the list if that's the. All right, got it. Engage with MDOT on its upcoming project on Saginaw Highway, west of Broadbent, or from the highway to west out to Broadbent Road. So that's participating in the public input process, reviewing their plan, providing feedback along the way, identifying opportunities to leverage TIF funding whenever there is a chance to enhance that project. Again, this isn't all spelled out in terms of what specifically that is going to be. And then supplementing MDOT outreach to area stakeholders to make sure that they engage. It's one thing if MDOT sends, in my experience with projects like this, one thing if MDOT sends a letter to a business, they may or may not see it. I think we could kind of play that supplemental party to handhold people and make sure that they're getting the information and at least are aware of their opportunities to provide feedback. Any concerns or questions about this one? Cool. Number 3 is working with our township engineering department again, strategically implement relevant provisions of the updated non-motorized plans, not completely updated yet, but they're in the process of going through a pretty thorough update of that. So some of the items under here, and again, including but not limited to pursuing sidewalk pathway connectivities and expansions wherever we can, finding ways to connect the corridor to the east-west pathway, pursuing opportunities to obtain easements and widen sidewalks, mid-block pedestrian crossings and strategic locations. Part of their work right now is identifying where the best places for some of that might be. And then upgrades of existing intersections. So I think MDOT has a phasing of their updates from no sound to the beeps to language, that kind of textured pavement, that kind of thing. So this is, our role is kind of fluid in this. I guess we're trying to get our foot in the door where we can and make some changes or at least influence projects. So I'm not committing any dollars to this. So it's more, let's try to take advantage of it when we can. Any concerns or questions about this one?
Clearly, we heard loud and clear in the Survey,
Yeah,
survey
survey.
that people want to see those improvements in the pedestrian crossings and everything. So, yeah, definitely we should do what we can there to facilitate that, make it happen.
Okay, number 4 is investigate the feasibility of burying power lines for areas of the corridor as identified in the Township Board Strategic Plan. So really, this is going to be limited to research, conversations with the utilities in the area. Right now, the kind of the prevailing thought is that it's cost prohibitive and challenging. And I can speak from experience. I worked on that in downtown Okemos, and it was multi-million dollars for just a half a block to move it. And then challenging also to the utility from a maintenance perspective. I think if Calvin was here, he'd say, well, hey, the high tension power lines are now in a vault and we want to access them, and things got more complicated for us. So this would be a study, a paper, whatever it would end up being to help determine whether that's viable or not. And if it's not, to close the door on it and kind of know where we stand. Okay. Now, number 5 is working with a consultant to draft a streetscape vision for Saginaw Highway from the highway east to Waverly. And so this would be really kind of true future planning, looking down the road towards if the MDOT project on the west side of the highway ever comes to fruition for the rest of the corridor. Right now that we know that they don't have any concrete plans to do that. It's not in their budget. It's not in the eye of their budget. It's just not accounted for at this point, but they know that it's needed. So I'm assuming at some point in the coming years, it'll surface as a priority and have some funds attached to it. So this would be getting ready for that. And at the last discussion we had, there was some thoughts and correct thoughts about how to tie this into the work that's being done on the west side. Now, the timing of all that, maybe what the discussions come out of that will help pave the idea or help cement what could be done over here. I just, negotiations and conversations with MDOT are always complicated. So I don't want to commit to anything, at least now, but like as we get further into it, we have a better idea of kind of where we can push, where there's flexibility compared to kind of what their plans are versus what the community wants. And if there is a gap between those two things, my assumption is there will be, but I don't know that for sure. They may come to us with a project that looks fantastic. So that's a much bigger project. Number 5 is a much bigger thing. I'm envisioning, cross sections and kind of just the typical things you see in transportation studies that will just give us a general idea of what we would be looking at in terms of where the boulevards are, green space, landscaping, how close buildings would be to the road. As part of that, we could look at our access management policy, and then wherever there are opportunities for traffic calming. So it's being ready to kind of work with MDOT on and meshing their vision with the community's vision for Saginaw.
And I think that's probably the most important thing, coming up with this plan that has our vision for what the corridor should look like, incorporating what the community says they want. I think is probably the most do here. How much we can implement, time will tell, and how much MDOT will go along with it. But if it's done, obviously with use of professionals who can, come up with doable things that could be done to Saginaw, it's convincing MDOT to do.
When I spoke with Suzanne Schultz a couple times now, she has really gone to battle in other communities around the state with MDOT on projects and is able to make some pretty good gains. I'm not suggesting we have some kind of adversarial relationship with MDOT, but the opportunity, you have to be assertive to get your vision into their world. But she was saying the more you can do to have your plan up front and have community buy-in on your plan, the more likely they are to kind of recognize it as valuable.
To showcase educated justification.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, developing recommendations for corridor regarding future land use and zoning policies. So this is kind of us wading into the planning and zoning world and the master plan. So the master plan is due for an update. That process has not started yet, but one consideration would be the CIA chiming in on land use, setbacks, height, that kind of thing for the corridor specifically. So really looking at the corridor as kind of a study area in the master plan and having some more granular details. Or at least using this body to kind of vet that kind of thing for transmittal to the planning commission. If in fact if we have a vision outside of what they've got. So I don't know, we didn't have anybody from planning here today, but I'll try to arrange that for the next meeting to have an update on where they're at with the master plan update.
What is the township's process for developing and then approving a new master plan? I mean, is it something that the planning group does and then presents to the trustees, to the board, and it gets approved? Is that basically how?
Yeah, it comes through, comes to the planning commission, to the board, lots of avenues for public input. And I think these types of issues obviously will be important, I think, for us to weigh in, clearly discussions of DDCs of parking lots and stuff along Saginaw is something that gets to the core of how do we change that core.
Setback, easement, signage, those are all important things to me, right? And to most all business owners.
Yep.
You could just put a sandwich board out, yeah.
So this number 6 is really gonna be done in concert with the planning department, planning commission, and I'm sure other groups in the township. Number 7, consider installations at the east and west community gateways. This was something I've seen noted in the TIF plan, but in my mind, it's something creative. It's how you're in Delta when you get to X, and so we've made some efforts at that. But it could be an interesting project. It's something that would be, I think, central to this group. I don't have any answers right now, but finding the right kind of people to help us be creative in that way and something that's functional and that's actually would work. Could be interesting. Number 8 is conduct needs assessment for street lighting. This is just to really verify if we need are there areas that need improvements to street lights? Do we need different types? Should we be kind of what's our plan for lighting? Are we served well now? What are the options? That kind of thing.
And I think the survey said that the public wanted to see pedestrian level type of lighting versus
Yes.
huge overhead lights. So
What
that is.
What does that mean? I literally don't know. What's pedestrian level? Ground or
Yeah,
just
something more,
closer to
not like a street lamp type of thing that's, more,
Like in the bridge in Grand Ledge versus like when they're really high up,
yes.
it feels much more, it's a perception of safety.
nice?
Yeah, it's an opportunity to have a design element to along the corridor.
I think it could be beautiful. I don't know.
Okay, number 9 is support and develop public transportation options along the corridor. So this would, and I'm not suggesting that we kind of operate this, but this would be working with CATA in some cases, but installation of covered bus shelters. So right now they're just signs, and I know the Route 3 is still technically temporary, but it is for 3 years. And I know that there's, and we'll have that conversation over time about the permanence of that route. And then we had talked last month about establishing micro transit hubs, or there's a bigger conversation about micro transit from the mall out to some of our bigger employers, the industrial sector specifically. I'd heard LCC West is mentioned as possibly a hub for that. So just being involved with those conversations, but specifically as it relates to Saginaw Highway and possibly improving the stops here along Saginaw.
I think definitely not only the installation of covered shelters, but dealing with, I've noticed since the expansion, you see some of the bus stops will have half dozen shopping carts for various stores all just left there.
Yeah, good point.
So we definitely will want to make sure that we find some solutions to make sure that these bus stops do not become an eyesore.
Yeah.
And, it's a combination of having attractive bus stops, but I'm not sure exactly what we can do or what needs to be done to stop all of the good shopping. Not leaving it there, but I think that making sure that these don't become eyesores will be key to making sure the corridor is nice.
Yeah, I can tell you, sorry, Scott.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I dealt with that in Meridian, so that we had a couple of different stops that carts just pile up. I mean, dozens of them. So we worked with the store owners to try to get them to have a program where they would come and pick up their carts. And that worked for a week. The township ended up picking them up and hauling them to their waste, like their waste station.
Wow.
But that's, yeah, definitely on my mind. And so we can try to tackle that from a couple different angles. Hopefully that does not involve with us picking up trash or picking up carts. Number 10 is to consider an economic analysis of the corridor. So there is a 2012 corridor market strategy and retail inventory. I've seen a lot of studies like this, and I added it to this just as a consideration. Because it doesn't, my personal opinion is it doesn't necessarily lead to a lot. It can tell you a lot about the market. But I think in modern times, a lot of businesses do their own market research and have a better idea that aren't reliant on the municipality to provide it. I've heard it called different things, leakage report, retail void analysis, where you look at like, and it's just, stay with me, because it's just kind of silly sometimes. It's like a third-party consultant will say, well, your market, based on math, you can support 6,000 square feet of bookstore space. And it's not necessarily always kind of like true to life. It's the paper economic version of that. So I think at least looking at what their options are and what they might mean. So having someone more educated on it than I provide some information on what your options could be. It could be at least interesting to hear what your options are. This is something that came from Suzanne, something that I want to consider.
I think the question would be, having us really assess what came out of the 2012 study. Was it ever used? Did it provide any benefit at all to the township?
Right.
Did it was it useful in bringing in any businesses, or was it just a waste of money?
That's fair. And I was planning on reviewing that and trying to give try to provide an answer for that, at least in hindsight now, what did that do for us?
Sure.
And we can review that. Okay, number 11 is enhanced business outreach, business development, communication efforts. These are kind of things that I'm doing on a daily basis, but I think they're important for me to bring back to the group on a regular basis, and certainly we can all work together on a lot of this. But identifying contact information for all the properties, businesses, building owners, property managers, just building out our corridor network, developing a business directory and a shop local first campaign. That might just be more of a kind of a social media thing, or maybe a document that we have. And then tracking tenant changes, which we do now, occupancy and property values, to see how those change over time. So we're really kind of at the beginning. I know we're maybe not quite the first bit on the overall corridor initiative, but since we are still early, this would be a good time to kind of establish our baseline data, and we can watch how it changes over time. So in a nutshell, those are the now 10 items that we've been considering for an action plan. All of this kind of came out of conversations here, things that are in the TIF plan. And so I'm obviously very open. It's your group, so open to how if you think we need to change things, add things, we can always amend this. I know I personally work better kind of with an action plan of like some direction on where we're going. So that was another reason I wanted to put this together, is just kind of provide some structure to our meetings and for the next year. To give us something to report out on.
Well, I mean, I think I said this last time too. I mean, I appreciate the list. I think it's important that it remain fluid to the degree that a lot of us, probably mostly me, are just, still learning this process like with a fire hose. So I am absolutely 100% confident in what I know, and absolutely sure there's more I don't know than I know. So, but I think it's a very helpful, reasonable structure, and I would double down on what Ken said. I think points 5 and 6 are, to me, the most important to present to the community down the road, so they get a sense of what the collective vision is. Obviously, it's hard to generate response anyway, but if they hate it, I'll bet we'll hear that.
Yeah.
Do we need 5 before we can even really do 6?
I kind of think you do. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what
how do you
I.
engage on some of these zoning and
Mhm.
those types of issues? If you don't know what your vision for what you want to create down the corridor, then what changes will need to be done to get there? So almost 5 becomes like the number one thing that we need to do right away. And then too, even when you look at engaging with MDOT on the, you know, the western end on the changes they're gonna make coming up soon. You want obviously a whole corridor that looks to make sense and everything,
Yep.
so you're gonna need to have that whole vision and then work immediately to implement pieces of it with MDOT as they redo the western part and then. Work, you know, over time and stuff to make the changes and zoning and everything else to change, you know, to bring the eastern portion into the vision. So that kind of like starts everything.
I agree. I mean, and I think it also has the greatest chance to stimulate community excitement. Even if you run the risk of some disappointment, we want to make sure it's realistic. But that community excitement can only compound further business development and investment. People start, oh, I want to get in on the ground floor before, you know, things change and get used up. I mean, entrepreneurs do think that way, so.
Okay, well, my plan, you know, pending input from you is to really work on fleshing these out and developing some kind of actionable tasks on each one. It's all very general and long-term, so there's obviously more that has to like, what are the actual things we're gonna do on these things? But engaging with for a lot of them are engaging with third parties. So we'll work to identify who that might be and kind of what the scope of all that is. And, you know, as we can move, what we can move, when we can move it, bring it back to this group for guidance. And this is a living document and we're not asking to adopt it,
Nope,
seal it or anything, but this is kind of just the work plan, at least from my perspective. All good on this?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right. Are we ready to move on to the next item? Other business?
Yeah.
Staff updates?
Well, so I do want to at least cover the informational meeting. So we're required by law to have two.
Informational.
And I think,
That's full. It looks like people are here. So.
yeah. And so I would have never known, there was an update to the TIF law that requires this now for these development districts. So Courtney, our finance director, brought it up to me, and so I would have never known about this. I'm glad she did. I sent notices to the tax and impacted tax jurisdictions that we were required within the time periods, 14, like at least 14 days. So we've noticed for this and for December. Obviously no one, but you know, the game, but there's just in the state law about anything we had to do today. It was nothing specific. I think it's just an opportunity built into the law for the jurisdictions to get updates on what we're up to and have the specific invite to come to the meeting. So we'll try again in December, and before then I'll actually reach out to the people in the organizations just to make sure that they're seeing the notice and that know about this group and if they have any questions. Oh, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. All right, let's move on then to the staff updates.
So I've got a couple things and Brian may as well. We have MDOT has reached out to us through our engineering department. So they did reach out preliminarily, just kind of, hey, we're getting started here. We're going to put an RFP together. Are you interested in working with us? The answer, of course, is yes. So that at least is a kernel of a beginning on something. So we're hoping to have more information on how that process is all gonna unroll here in the coming month or months. So
I mean, what year do they actually have that slated?
that was 2028,
2028.
but their year of design work starts. No.
Probably all of 2024.
Yeah.
Working on design.
I
So
think-
we want to have our stuff shored up by as soon as possible, basically.
I think so, yeah.
Ideally, we probably want a kind of a parallel process as they work on that side. Supervisor Fletcher mentioned it's a little bit different there than here, but you want it to be
Right, cohesive, right.
cohesive
Yeah.
and start looking ahead and that type of thing. They're limited on this side with their right of way and some other things from what I understand with their design, but hopefully they asked us for input already and we'll be scheduling consistent project update meeting with them.
Great.
Yep, so that's exciting. It's a long, I think they do a year of design, a year of public input.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm sure there's a year of something, and then before they actually pull any, pickaxes swing or whatever they use these days. Okay, a couple things. So I did hand out an updated project list. There's not as many new things happening as I have been in the last few months, end of the year kind of thing. But a couple wanted to highlight. So Meyer, they're planning on having their westernmost door open that first week of December. So that project's and then what they told me from there is really just punch list stuff. So that Meyer renovation project should be getting closer to being done. The best discount furniture is supposed to open later this week. A couple of us did a walk through with the lessee. And it's in not ready shape. It's not ready for prime time. They're doing a lot of work inside the space, and it looks like a Macy's, but they have reconditioned the floors and are kind of just upgrading everything because it had been vacant for like 7 years before that. So, but it's incredible how big. It's 101,000 square feet total. They're going to have about 60,000 square feet of showroom, and they have everything. Everything. And he plans on selling it at a significant discount. They want to be more of a bulk, like sell more, less expensive. What's that? Yeah, just selling in volume. That's what I'm looking for. But it's very nice, and the furniture is pretty high end. So, but it runs the gamut. They have everything at that place. So they plan on opening probably later this week, a soft opening, and then doing a larger grand opening in January. And then Zapzone, probably if you saw the newspaper today, they had a big feature on Zapzone, which is really cool. They are going to try to be open by December 15th. So we'll work with them on the grand opening. They've got a lot of things planned, but so we had 2 big anchor spaces at the mall coming together. They both will have interior access. I don't know how much crossover there's going to be. Hopefully it will help the stores that are inside. But big changes at the mall coming along. You probably follow my emails on the grand openings. We did do something for the bricks and minifigs thing on Saturday. I can send around a couple pictures after this, but it was fantastic. They had probably 150 people there, giant inflatable Lego out front, tons of kids, and they did some kind of Lego giveaway thing, but it was really successful, and the business owners were happy with the turnout.
They came and spoke at the Rotary meeting that week.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, they seem like nice people, and
It is a chain, but it's not. I think there's one in Grand Rapids, but I haven't seen the other.
they're
Yeah,
a
there's
brand.
one in Kalamazoo, I think, too.
Okay.
Or Portage, maybe.
I'd never heard of it before.
They're
it came
a
around.
franchise, and they're from out
It's awesome.
west, he explained.
Yeah.
Utah, I believe, is headquartered.
Okay. So yeah, I hope they do well in the space that they picked. Did you have anything you wanted to share on staff updates?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we hit the highlights, but
Yep.
if there's any questions, happy to answer.
It's a random question. What's happening with the Horrocks beer garden stuff right now? That I've seen sort of, but like didn't have time to actually do like the adult thing and read all about it. Sorry.
Says, yeah, they're temporary closed down. They're gonna be doing some upgrades and putting in some different code related fire suppression things and that type of thing, so.
Is this horror? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically they built that greenhouse as a greenhouse. If they want to have an assembly, which they do, want to have an assembly space in there.
They need
There-
to make the adjustment.
There's, yeah,
Okay.
a checklist of things like fire suppression.
So it's not as
heavy
insane
alarms
as
set
people
up.
are making it sound on Facebook groups.
Oh, no.
Okay.
What are they saying?
It's like, why are we doing this? Like, is that like, it's just, like the typical witch hunt stuff, of like people
Oh,
not
yeah.
understanding why things are closed and, yeah, so. I was like, got a meeting with them on Monday, I'll ask about this. So from a logical perspective, it's because it was built as a greenhouse.
And no, and that's
And
a,
probably just needs some safety.
yes.
And are they blaming the township for this?
I haven't seen a boo word about you guys yet, but it's more of a generalized, yuck, so.
Yeah, there's folks upset, so that it did, that beer garden, it morphed from, you know, it was all
Right.
kind of open air during COVID and then, you know, Horrocks, everything they do kind of turns successful very quickly. So, they just hit, you know, they just have to make some upgrades and improvements. Hopefully, get back open, you know.
That sounds completely reasonable.
Yeah,
So-
and we've met with their ownership, they're supportive of making
Great.
these changes, they don't see anything that they can't do. So it should just be a matter of getting their plans together and submitted and getting stuff installed.
Great.
And then it'll be good for them long term, then they'll be able to use the space and people will be safe using the space and.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I saw it and I'm like.
Oh, thanks for
yeah,
asking.
Yeah, do too much homework with it, but. This year is the public being the public. So,
Thank you for the updates, though.
Thank you.
yeah, this is so great. I love this.
Me too.
Mhm. All right, anything else from leadership over here?
Nothing on our end, so we're planning to meet in December, we have another informational meeting in December.
Yeah,
So hopefully everybody can make it. And you know, we're gonna just try to get more and more information on the action plan as we go through the next year here, so. Appreciate the time to go through it and talk kind of granularly about it, it'll help inform the efforts that we make here.
Are these informational meetings required to be back to back, or should we space them out?
Next year, we will space them out and have them in more, yeah, they're not required to be back to back, it was more like, oh my gosh, we gotta do these meetings, let's get them scheduled right away.
That's fair. And so it's in the calendar cycle,
What's that?
calendar year versus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we caught it late. in the
I caught it
year.
late,
You guys did it though, so yay. I mean, thank you for
Yeah.
Yeah,
doing that.
but yeah, next year we'll every or biannual here.
Yeah, I'll try
Sure.
to do one early and one maybe October, like September or something.
Yeah.
all right, that's good.
As you can see, they're very
Yeah.
productive and well
Yes.
funded.
We need a bigger space.
Do we need to offer coffee, tea, cookies?
Yeah.
What do we have to do to get them here?
Yeah.
We could always do that, right? Anyways, okay, so let's, next meeting is Monday, December 11th, 4 p.m. Everybody plan to be here. No closed session. So anything else to come before the group? Would you like to share anything with us?
But good to be here.
There goes your credibility.
All right, so if there's nothing else, what is it?
4:47.
4:47. Okay, I guess there's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There you go. All right, so. Meeting is
Thank you.
adjourned. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, everyone.
Hey, Kurt.